Welcome to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast, your go-to resource for all things tennis coaching. Your host is Steve Whelan. Here, we dive deep into ecological dynamics and constraint-led coaching practices. Whether you're a seasoned coach or just starting out, this podcast is designed to build your confidence, expand your knowledge, and refine your techniques. Join me as we challenge traditional methods, explore player-centered approaches, and transform your coaching experience. Let's take your coaching game to the next level together. Stay tuned for insightful discussions and practical tips that will make a real difference on and off the court.
Coaches will use basket drilling or isolated drills to improve confidence. That's what we're going to talk about today on the My Tennis Coaching Podcast. I hope you're all well and you are enjoying your week. Please, if you haven't already, check out last week's podcast. I had a great conversation with Matt Wiggum from Peak Perform in Australia on all things environmental design, practice design, ecological dynamics, constraint-led coaching. It was a fantastic conversation. Today, I want to discuss a common pushback that I get a lot from tennis coaches. Yeah, but we will use the basket drill or isolated practice to develop confidence. We have a beginner, they lack in confidence, so I use a basket drill to grow or develop that confidence. And to be honest, it's something that I've done in the past and an excuse that I've used for basket drilling. And even quite recently, I've agreed with some coaches when they say, yeah, well, I want to develop confidence, and it's a great way of developing confidence just by giving players a easier ball or a short ball and allowing the player to smack the ball down the line for winners. And I've been reflecting on it over the past couple of days. And yes, I think players will develop confidence in that situation because they'll get lots of success. The situation, the isolated practice, is designed in such a way that it's quite difficult to fail. There's lots of success going on. However, I do believe that that success is fake. It's temporary. It's not going to last. And when a player gets themselves in a match situation and it's not as structured, it's not as predictable, and even if they get the exact same ball that you've given them from the exact same position that they've been practicing, there's other environmental constraints in play. There's other player constraints in play. The task itself, the score, the situation in the match, that's in play. Therefore, your confidence is built upon shaky ground. As soon as you miss that one shot, because there's additional pressures, because there's an additional variability or there's an additional demand on you, when you miss, all that confidence goes out the window. And I truly believe that tennis coaches, myself included in this conversation, we like isolated or basket drills because they're easy. It's so easy to get quick wins. Because of the situation being so sterile, because it's so predictable, the player gets lots of success. We look like an absolute legend. The player's really happy. If it's a junior, mum and dad are really happy. And yeah, people are quite happy handing over some money at the end of a session. But like we talked about a million times in this podcast before, it doesn't last. It's a quick hit. A quick boost of adrenaline, a quick dopamine hit, because you get lots of success, but you then go into a match and it disappears. So my counter argument of not using basket drills and not using isolated practice, imagine your player develops skill in a more dynamic and versatile and adaptable situation. So rather than having the perfect ball fed to them, maybe they have multiple different types of shots to deal with, different types of situations, different pressures, whether that be score pressure or environmental changes. Imagine developing your skills in that situation. Surely that gives you more confidence. Would I be more confident knowing I've only got one shot or multiple shots? Would I be more confident knowing I can hit a shot within a certain situation, or I can hit a shot in multiple different situations? That's where I think ecological dynamics, constraint-led coaching, chaotic learning environments, wicked learning environments, they actually create more confident athletes or players because we're giving them a wider range of skills. Now, of course, there's always nuance to this, and you can't just throw a player into a match. You've got to narrow it down, the variability, just a little bit to really get enough repetition of the skill, not of the technique. You've got to allow them to have some success within a certain situation. And that's the art of coaching. It's working up and down that funnel of variability, if you want to look at the Newcomb model or whatever way you want to look at it. It's moving up and down that scale of where do I need to bring it to get some success. There's not so much chaos, not so much variability, but then how quickly can I get it back towards the open game? And with isolated practices, we go so far the opposite way, and we're just at the far end of that funnel of variability and the far end of the spectrum now. And it's so sterile, it's so isolated, it's so easy, it's so predictable. And I think sometimes we want people to live in that comfortable area because it's easy. No one likes feeling uncomfortable. No one likes feeling under challenge or under strain. No one likes failing. That's why tennis is so challenging, I believe, because you have to deal with all those situations. But because you deal with those situations, you almost become a better person and a better player because of those situations. Those situations, those uncomfortable environments, they shape you. And life is uncomfortable, life is challenging, life is not easy, life is never safe, and you get success in everything you do. So why do we teach tennis that way? Why do we teach sport in general that way? Lots of success. I do truly believe that the factor of money being involved plays a huge part. We want our players to have quick wins. We want them to feel comfortable so they keep coming back. The downside is when they go off and play a competition. It's a different sport. It's a different environment. And they haven't got the experience or the skills to deal with that situation. And that's where we lose them. And that's where you lose your income, because they don't come back. They go off and do a different sport. And I've said this a long time ago on this very podcast. Our job is to prepare players to live in those environments, to live in those uncomfortable environments. And I don't agree with the confidence thing. I really don't. I think it's pie in the sky. I think that's just tennis coaches trying to justify it for themselves. And another pushback that I get quite a lot as well. Yeah, but if you look at the top players, if you look at the Alcarazes or the Igas, like there's lots of clips of them doing basket drills. I've never seen Alcaraz do a basket drill. I've looked as well. I've never seen it, but okay, I'll take your word for it. Or if you go to Spartak Moscow in Russia, they do lots of basket drills. They produce world-class, world number one players. They do basket drills, Steve. It works. Look, surely the evidence is the success of the players that you see. And that's such an oversimplification of it. We can look at Nadal and we can maybe look at him doing loads of basket drills as a junior and think, okay, that's the reason why. We might want to take in consideration the other training he did outside of that, the amount of matches he played, the amount of unstructured training he did, his mentality, his ability to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. We just believe that the basket drills are what shapes the athlete, what shapes the player. And I don't buy it. Okay, that's the proof of the success. Because if basket drilling worked and it was really, truly impactful, why don't we have more tennis players? Think about the hundreds of millions of players who play or have coaching around the world. We're all training the same way. We're all training the basket drill. Okay, so if it was that impactful, if it worked that well, why don't we have millions of players who can play the game to a really high standard? Why at your tennis club do you only have a handful of players who play to a high standard? 10% of most tennis clubs play competitive tennis, if that. It's actually getting smaller. Then what about the other 90%? Because they'd all train the same way. And then we just make these excuses, don't we? Yeah, but it's the mentality. Oh, it's the physicality. Oh, it's the fact that they're doing 4 or 5 hours. Baloney. There's absolutely no scientific evidence to show that isolated practice works. Nothing. There is evidence and research to show that a more dynamic methodology or learning environment like constraint-led coaching, ecological dynamics, that shows it transfers more. There's evidence to show which transfers more. And it's interesting because coaches still are struggling to let go of this belief of we've always done it, or look at the top players, they did it, or look at Steve down the road, he's a top national junior, he's basket drilling all the time. Let's just copy and paste, let's just try what they're doing. And it doesn't work, and that's why we struggle to let go of it. That's why we struggle to move on, because we're scared of doing something different. I will always go back to the 10%. 10% of players make it through, if that. 90% of players training the same way, the same methods, they don't make it. If this method worked and it had a huge impact, surely 90% of players will play to a high standard and 10% just don't make it. But we always have this survivorship bias of, okay, well, if it worked for Alcaraz or if it works in Spartak Moscow, then it should work. There's the proof, there's the evidence. You can't argue with that, Steve. The Spanish do loads of basket drilling, they're really successful. It's just a simplification way. We're just simplifying something that's actually quite complicated, quite nuanced in terms of player development. My argument always is, imagine how good those players could be if they didn't do the basket drilling. Imagine if they actually trained the sport that they play rather than this watered down, isolated version of the sport they play. Imagine how good they could have been. Did the basket drilling actually stop them from reaching their potential? That's a more interesting question. Let me know in the comments. The great thing about Spotify now is you can actually leave comments on each podcast. So let me know your thoughts and comments within the comment section. And until next time, ditch the basket drill. Just play tennis. Speak to you soon.
Thank you for tuning in to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring more insightful discussions and valuable tips to enhancing your coaching journey. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at MyTennisCoaching for daily inspiration, coaching advice, and behind-the-scenes content. Stay connected, stay inspired, and keep pushing the boundaries of your coaching skills. Until next time, keep fostering growth, innovation, and excellence on and off the court. See you in the next episode.